Good morning, everyone, and welcome back. I've already started my day with a little bit of a fiasco. Now, I did completely impose this on myself, but I've about run my truck out of diesel exhaust fluid. As you can see, my diesel exhaust fluid, or DEF, is out, and in 2 miles, my truck is limited to 5 miles per hour max speed. The farm is much farther away than 2 miles. It's more like 10 plus miles. And at 5 miles an hour, that'd be about as fast as me jogging out there. Which would not be fast at all. So I'm gonna have to hop in Allie's car, run somewhere in town, find some DEF, put it in my truck, then I can go to work. As I said though, it's completely my fault. I usually try to take too much of an advantage over the free 500 miles that you get after you're out of DEF. I believe you get 400 miles once it's empty until it lowers you to 65 miles an hour. Then you get 100 miles till 55 miles an hour. And to be quite honest with you, I did not know what happens after that point. After you pass the 55 mile an hour limit, it drops you straight down 5 miles until you're limited to 5 miles an hour. So I gotta go solve this problem, and then we'll get some work done. All right, we found what we needed at AutoZone. And on the bright side, GMC did move the DEF tank right next to the fuel tank. So I guess there's some positives in the day. Back to our scheduled programming. Planter preparations, part 2. 1,000 likes, everyone do your part. It only takes a second or two, helps me out a ton. It's down here somewhere. Click that thumbs up. We really only have 2 main things on the agenda for these planters. First and most importantly, we have to put the bean plates in. The bean plates are essential for the planter putting in the accurate number of seeds. We'll take it outside and do that. And secondly, we're going to be readjusting our no-till coulters. Over time, as you run any kind of iron through the ground, they slowly wear down. These aren't worn terribly bad. We do have the option though to just undo this a little bit and lower them down. That way our no-till coulter is sitting a little bit more even with our True V opener right there in the middle. That should help with increasing the quality of our planting. We'll start by putting together the bean units and then go from there. It's beautiful out right now. They are calling for some rain, so let's try and get this done. We may even move on to the Exact-Emerge planter if we're quick enough. We've got the planter backed up here, unfolded. The wings are up, that way we can get to those rows without knocking ourselves out. These are the bean plates we're putting in. All I gotta do is pop this off, clean out the inside if there's anything in there, put the plate in, twist it on. Very hard to click in, but once they're clicked in, you just cover it back up, snap it in, and you're good to go. Okay, Jeff and I are gonna get to work to put in all 32 of these plates. Okay, we finished up putting in the bean plates relatively quickly. The wind's blowing extremely hard at this point. I think we're gonna have a storm here in the next few minutes or an hour or so. And then it's supposed to rain all day. We looked at those no-till coulters in front of the True V openers on the row units, and it honestly appears like they're not actually going to need adjusted. They aren't quite as worn as they look from farther away. When you kind of analyze them up close, they're only really a ½ inch above the bottom of the True V's, which is actually where they're supposed to be at. So we're gonna double check those in a little bit. I don't think we're going to end up changing them though. I'm going to go through and look at our monitor here, make sure all of our settings are calibrated, then I'm going to wipe the monitor, put our new lines on it. The boss just showed up and verified that the rows are exactly where they need to be, or at least within a close degree of error. We're going to fold her up and possibly put it in the barn. Rain's coming. You're going to have to make a pretty wide turn that direction and then cut it around, pull it out the barn kind of at an angle. This is a 60-foot wide planter. I would imagine that the transport length of it is probably 35 foot, maybe even 40 foot. looks like we're just doing a little tractor shuffle. Don't hit the auger. Now we can work with it inside. We're test running all the systems on this planter. Hopefully none of these lines come out and make a mess. We're going to put the electric drive belts in the unit and the plates as well. These belts are what deliver the seed from the plate down to the ground and what help it add added accuracy. Over the winter, to reduce tension, we untighten these springs on the belt, so we got to put those back together like that. Then we pull the row unit off and it drops in there and hooks up. Get this dropped in, hook up the wire, snap it into place, then set the unit back on, put the plates on. Do that to all 24 rows and it'll be ready to go. All of the delivery belts are now installed. Next thing we're going to do, open up all these row units and blow them out to get all the debris, seed, dust from last planting season and probably multiple planting seasons that's accumulated in here. That way we have a better vacuum and hopefully better singulation on the row unit. After we clean all of these out, then we'll be putting these round plates in for corn. They look a little bit different than the other planter. They definitely accumulate a lot of dust. Still visibly. So I'll blow them off. It's all the graphite we use to lubricate the seed coming from the central fill tank all the way down to the row units. It's turned into a lovely afternoon to work inside. Or go take a nap, I don't know which. We're gonna go ahead and blow off all the row units, get the dust off like I just said, then we're gonna put the plates in. So let's make a mess first, or unmake a mess by making another mess. Blower's not running very good if you couldn't tell by the sound. Probably had its better days. Probably part of why it doesn't work well when it's treated like that. I just launched it into the ground. These are the corn plates for our ExactEmerge planter. Like I said, they're a little bit different shape than the hydraulic drive bean planter. Kind of have a dish look to them as opposed to just a flat disc. The difference between the corn plates and the bean plates are just these filled in areas right here. On the corn plates they have a skip, whereas the bean plates have one. Every single hole is open. So this planter behind me that we use to plant corn is John Deere's ExactEmerge planter. The ExactEmerge lineup is John Deere's best of the best in planting technology. Some of you may be familiar with this planter from Millennial Farmers videos last spring. Deere sent him a 16-row ExactEmerge planter. This is a 24-row, so another 20-foot wide, an extra 8 rows. It's capable of a lot more capacity if you have the tractor to pull it. Now, John Deere also sent him an 8RX quad track to go with his 16-row corn planter. We don't quite have any of those luxuries. We do have this 8310R in the back. When we get into some tougher fields, it doesn't quite have enough power to pull this planter exactly how fast it's capable of planting. That's the beauty of this planting system. It can plant fast and accurately at speeds that even a hydraulic drive planter, which is an older set of technology, cannot keep up. The accuracy and precision of your planting job is extremely important in corn. Corn has a relatively low population out in the field, 30 to 36,000 plants per acre, and the spacing in between corn plants and the seeds you put in the ground can make a very large difference in the final yield. Corn grows so fast, and it is viciously competitive against all other plants in the field, even its own neighboring corn plants. They're all trying to get the same goal, but they're not on the same team. So that is why it's so important for your corn stand to be accurate and precise, which is why people invest in these planters. Do I think the ExactEmerge planter is worth the money? Definitely yes. Do I think an 8RX quad track is worth the money? That's debatable. That tractor really cannot do anything that our 8310R can't do, except for obviously the 8410RX quad track has about 100 more horsepower and probably some Cadillac-like amenities in the cab. Tractors have little to do with yield. Now, they do make it easier to work long hours, and if you've got money to spend, some people like to spin it that way. A planter like this though, ExactEmerge, it's one of the best technologies you can get. Obviously, there are other few brands like Precision Planting that also make similar great technologies. We just happen to like to stay with Deere. It's easy to service, and it's what we're used to. For those farmers out there who don't want to buy a brand new piece of iron, you can retrofit older style planters to fit new row units. Going back to Millennial Farmer, it looks like this winter, he took his older row units off of his 24-row planter and put on ExactEmerge units. That is a much more cost-effective way to add the ExactEmerge units to your planter. Some people like to go a little bit different and get the Precision Planting units. They're also pretty good from what I can tell. Both are great for having a good corn stand. This is what the sealed up row unit looks like on the planter. We've got our vacuum hose, and then we've got our seed delivery hose right here that runs on a fan off this big fan coming from the central fill tanks. So when you pop open one of these units, take the vac hose off, take the strap off, you have the plate. Now this is loose for demonstration purposes. This plate is what controls the singulation, the population, as it spins around. After the seeds are delivered through the fan right here into this holding area, they get pulled against this plate from the vacuum against the cover. They spin around. All of the extras and doubles get knocked off, or hopefully knocked off, by this brush here. Then they spin around, are taken off by the delivery brush, and go straight to the ground. All of this in combination is what allows the planter to plant so accurately. The main selling point of this technology is that it has 2 electric motors. Our bean planter, for instance, runs on a hydraulic system, so there's a hex shaft that goes across the planter and spins every unit mechanically. Each one of these units has 2 motors on it. You may know that electric motors are extremely accurate and very easily adjustable. So there's one powering the plate, and there's one powering the delivery brush. That way the plate is always spinning at the perfect speed for the right population, and the delivery brush matches equally so that the spacing against the ground is good. For how complicated they are, they're relatively simple to take apart. That's all it takes. Let's finish putting these plates on. There are 2 other features that these planters have, which I don't know if they're standard, but are extremely important for an accurate planting job. One being automatically adjusting hydraulic downforce. That solenoid keeps pressure on the entire row unit as it bounces across the ground. Because they're hydraulic and not air, they adjust almost instantly in milliseconds to ground conditions. Making sure that your planter stays flat across the ground is really important. If the planter does not have enough pressure on it, as it hits bumps, it's going to hop out of the ground. The hydraulic downforce makes it so that it just smoothly rides across the field. And at high speeds, that's even more important. The other really important feature is this active wing downforce right there. There's one cylinder on each side to help spread the weight off of the center out onto the wings. Not quite as important as the hydraulic row downforce. It does help with compaction, especially when you have a very full seed tank. These back tires can get a lot of weight on them, and that helps spread the weight across the outside of the planter. People often deal with pinch row compaction here on the back. Should help alleviate it some. It's not going to be perfect, especially if it's not tuned 100% accurately. It is better than nothing. Then obviously your standard features on these Deere planters. You got your seed depth right here, and then you've got your closing wheel spring tension here on the back. This is the exact same setup we run on the soybean planter. Different farmers use different equipment on their row units. You have your no-till coulter up front, which kind of slices a trench in the ground. Then you have your true V opener, which cuts a perfect seed trench for the seed to fall in. It will fall in right in this area in the middle. Then you have your 2 gauge wheels on either side that help set the perfect seed depth, which is what this lever adjusts. And then obviously your closing wheels close the trench. You'll see all sorts of different arrangements. Some people have spiked closing wheels. Other people don't like to run no-till coulters. They may run row cleaners. They may not run anything. It's kind of buyer's choice at the farm, depending on what recipe the farmer wants. They seem to all do about the same job at the end of the day. It also helps to unplug these. It's an interesting thing to figure out when you're out in the field, that that's not uncapped. Just for comparison, we'll look at the soybean planter. The row unit itself is almost identical in terms of hardware. This planter is a few years older, so it does have a little bit more wear. Obviously, seed depth the same, closing wheel settings are the same. The row unit is the biggest difference, and then secondarily, we have airbag downforce instead of hydraulic, which is a little bit less responsive. And by a little bit, I mean a few degrees of significance. The principle of the seed unit is the same. We've got a fan delivering seed into this holding area or hopper. Then you have a vacuum line creating negative pressure against the plate. The soybean plates in this that are flat get pulled up around here, spin around, and there's no delivery brush in there. They fall straight down to the ground. Again, the delivery brush is just as essential in the X-Acto planter as the electric motor is for planting accuracy. If you didn't have both of them, you wouldn't be able to plant fast. Soybeans are much less sensitive to the amount of plants growing around them. Really, you can get away with anything from 100,000 to 200,000 seeds out in a field with very minimal differences in final yield. Those numbers do matter a little bit as you get later in the planting season. If you're planting in June around here, you definitely want to up your population. But if you're getting in at the ideal time, so April, it doesn't really matter if you plant 100, 150, 165, they'll all produce the same yield. I'm going to try and give you a little demonstration of what these row units do when they're running out in the field. We don't have any seed in here, so use your imagination. You'll get a pretty good idea. The operator of this planter has a lot of control of these units up in the cab. There's a lot of different features on the Greenstar monitors to test these planters. Pay attention to the brushes running right here that deliver the seed, and this is what it looks like with the seed plate on. It's Dad's first time running the planter in probably 8 or 9 months. Might take him a few minutes to figure it out. He's a little slow with technology. There's the brush running, pulls the seed off the plate, takes it to the ground. These are just test runs, so they don't run very far around, but imagine out in the field it's running continuously. Okay, we'll get you them both running at the same time. Again, the reason you can control all of this without the planter being down is because it is all powered by electricity. That is that generator that we hooked up in the last video. It supplies the power to these units. For the bean planter, which is hydraulically driven to run, it has to be on the ground. That's part of what its design is. The ground doesn't actually generate the force, but it is required for it to understand where it's planting. We finally got everything checked off, so we can get back to what we were doing earlier, working on our Greenstar system, organizing it a little bit. Seed bin is almost empty. Well, I would hope so. Before I got interrupted earlier, I went into my Greenstar settings and just made sure that I had my section control timing settings saved. I had my equipment, my tractor offsets, and my planter offsets saved. As I've explained before, those are crucial for my section control or my swath control to work out in the field accurately. Swath control is what shuts off individual sections of the planter as you cross an area that has already been planted. This is good for seed saving and not overpopulating spots in the field. I'm adding these clean RTK lines that are on this flash drive to this monitor and completely wiping it clean of all of its old data, documentation, fields, and lines. Our Greenstar system had kind of gotten out of hand. Marty's computer file management is rather messy, so I've got this right here, solves all our problems. That or I'm going to get myself in a massive mess. All I do is pop her in. I recognize immediately that it has data. We'll import. Do I want to proceed? Yes, that's the point. Now it's overriding all of the old data. We're adding the new data. Then I'm going to have to go back in and re-enter all of my offsets. Beep, boop, bop, loading. No going back now. The suspense is killing me. Just a sliver left. 3, 2, 1, done. Okay, no. Disregard that. Transfer complete. Nice. Okay, first thing we're gonna do is go to our Greenstar, go to guidance. We're gonna turn on auto steer. That's up here on the guidance tab. Guidance off. We usually just do AB, so straight track. That's on now. General settings, we won't mess with these unless we have some problems out in the field planting. I may play with these on the 8310R and the ExactEmerge planner. I think some of these settings on these pages may make a difference for how well that ExactEmerge planner and its tractor track through the field. There's different things you can play with. You see line sensitivity stuff, heading, steering response, acquire sensitivity, so how fast it picks up a line, curve sensitivity, that's if you're using a curve, which really won't have any effect on us. We don't use any curved lines. And we're gonna go in here, section control, overlap settings, that's all the same. Turn on and off settings, 0.9, 0.3. Well, actually, that's the same. Good. Don't have to mess with that at all. That actually could be attached to the planner and not necessarily to the tractor or the Greenstar screen. So for our swath control, our planner turns on 0.9 seconds after the dome up there crosses the line of where we planted. It turns off 0.3 seconds after it crosses the line if we're going into something that's already been planted. The 0.9 and the 0.3 respectively are the time it takes for the planner to get to where it needs to be on or off. Verify my offset settings with my correct screen here, and it is exactly the same. That's nice. Accept those, and then we'll check the planner. Planner offsets, change offsets, 16, 4, 0, 17.6, and 0. Well, none of those changed at all. That's rather convenient. You wouldn't think that these would make a big difference for the section control, but they actually play a very key role. If the guidance system has a different idea about where everything is located, if your dome's off, maybe the length of your planner, it can actually negatively impact the accuracy of your section control. Well, seems to me like that was the easiest thing I've done. Some of you may think it's kind of silly that I'm going in and triple and quadruple checking these numbers on the monitor. A few inches off on these offsets can equal 3 or 4 feet out in the field. That's 3 foot that you may leave unplanted or 3 foot that's overplanted. In our first cornfield last year, somehow the corn planter had gotten out of whack and those offsets changed ever so slightly, and we had about 7 or 8 rounds out in the field that we had to spot in 3 or 4 foot on either side. That is just a small mishap. I have seen much larger catastrophes happen across the farm. It really doesn't amount to that much money, but it does not look good, especially when a farmer forgets this and gets through their entire crop without recalibrating or double checking their section control. It's obvious when you drive by a farm where the planter was not set right. It stinks, it happens to everyone, but you hate when it happens to you. We're gonna go check out the 8310R, wipe the screen, make sure the settings are right, and then we'll probably be done for the day. Now we're in the captain's chair of the Starship. This 2630 has a few obvious changes here, which are all because of the ExactEmerge planner. We have our planner auxiliary, which controls folding and unfolding as opposed to the brown or black box that I have in my planner. We have ePlanner, which is basically just the planning page. The wireless data server, which is back there on the back, this has a Wi-Fi connection that runs from the planner to the monitor and then also connects to an iPad. That way data can be uploaded instantaneously. This is pretty common on new equipment, not just planters, combines, tractors, pretty much everything under the sun at this point. Deere has the ability to upload data pretty quickly to the online. And then power generation, this is your PTO. We might as well take advantage of our time alone here and kind of snoop through this computer. His planner offers so many more diagnostics than mine. We have seeds per acre, so population, that's standard. We have singulation right here, which basically tells you how often the planter plants one seed. A poorly tuned or poorly equipped planter often will send 2 seeds out at one time, as opposed to 1, which is what you're shooting for. Singulation is the measurement of how often it sends just 1 seed. This planter right here will show almost 99.9% on every unit throughout the entire field. That's how accurate it is. CV, which stands for coefficient of variation, is just a very simple measurement of the typical spacing between two seeds. This gives you a good idea of how well it's spacing seeds out in the field. Here we have our row downforce tab. This just gives them an idea of what each row is doing as it's bouncing through the field. These numbers will vary a little bit as they adjust to different conditions, different slopes, different bumps. Pretty simple. And then last but not least, we have percent good ride. This right here shows a measurement of the quality of ride of each row out in the field. With this actively adjusting hydraulic downforce, you get pretty much 99% good ride through the field. Occasionally you get into some areas where the soil's tough, maybe wet, and you get down to the 80s and 90s, but that is very, very limited. On the bottom, you just have a few quick controls. This is just to spin your row units, to prime them, empty them, test them. This gives you an individual analyzation of each row. So right here we have row 1 pulled up. It's not planting, so it can't give us any stats on it, but we do know that the target population is 34.5, so 34,500 corn plants per acre. This is transport mode. It turns off all the hydraulics, so that way you don't accidentally unfold it going down the road. That'd be hard to do, but anything's possible. And here we just have a settings tab. Different things you can turn on. Oh, while I'm walking by this, I realized that something completely slipped my mind about this planter that's different than a hydraulic drive planter. The vacs on this planter are automatically adjustable. All the operator has to do is provide hydraulic flow to these vacs, and they will automatically determine what the appropriate level of negative pressure is for the row unit so it plants accurately. The hydraulic drive planter is completely manual. I have to play with the hydraulic pressure on the two levers that control the vacuums to get them where they need to be to help increase the accuracy of our planting. All right, everyone, that is pretty much it for today's work. We've accomplished a lot in this episode. We've got both of our planters almost 95% ready to roll. We probably need to throw some seed in them, take them out into the lot, test them with something that's actually physical and not just them running with nothing in them. The weather outside right now isn't really that encouraging for planting season. I would say we're probably still 2 weeks away from even thinking about turning over any dirt, and that's if we miss some big rains. In the next episode, I believe we'll probably be pulling out our tillage implements, the vertical till and the 2 field cultivators. I know you all don't want to miss out on that action, so make sure you have channel notifications turned on. As always, I appreciate your support. Thank you for tuning in. Like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and comment if you have any questions. You know I love to talk about farming. Have a great day, everyone. Peace!